was 7 years older than Bob, and it seemed so strange to be standing here talking at his service when it seems like it should have been the other way around. I remember when Bob was born, I had had 7 wonderful years. This guy arrived on the scene. Folks, I had evil thoughts. Thankfully, I didn't express them to my folks. And how misguided I was. As Charlie Brown might have said, it wasn't so bad after all. The interesting thing is that as the years rolled by, we became so close. We weren't necessarily together geographically, but by telephone, whatever means we could use, we communicated. As Dana has already indicated, our dad was a railroad conductor. And this was a great benefit to the family because Dad could get passes on any railroad throughout the country. I remember one trip to California. Our folks, Bob, who was 5 years old, and myself, we loved to play pinochle. This little tyke played a mean game of pinochle. It was embarrassing. But in retrospect, even though it was rather amazing, it isn't surprising at all in light of Bob's intellectual pursuits and all the things that this man accomplished. As Dan has also said, our dad was killed in 1958 in a train accident. We went home from the funeral, and it was Bob's first year. He was there on scholarship at Harvard Law School. I was very concerned about him because he didn't seem himself. He was withdrawn. He was stoic. And it just wasn't a good scene. Bob went back to law school. My family and I went back to Illinois where we lived. And a week later, we got a call from Bob, and he said, I've been thinking about this, and I think I'd like to drop out of law school. What? Well, I don't like the courses, and kind of boring around here. So we listened and finally said to Bob, why don't you try it for a year, just to see how it goes? So he thought about it for a few days, and he came back and he said, this is what I want to do. But today you heard Dana speak about Bob and read one of his wonderful writings. He went back to school, and instead of studying the law, and I'll be darned if I know how he got through, he used the rest of the year to write and write and write. Folks, it is voluminous. Poetry, essays, short stories. And the gist is that this was the way that he could process his grief, as Dana has indicated. Well, we know what happened. He concentrated in contracts law. He became a wonderful teacher, and his world unfolded. He finally got back to the Boston area after being in several law schools and ended up at Boston College. Bob loved sports as a participator, as a spectator, and he had this idea. What about a course in sports law? So he talked with the dean about it. The dean okayed it. He put it together, and it boomeranged. It was an instant hit to the point of where now, all over the country, sports law is taught. It was the first course in this country in sports law. What an innovation, what a contribution, and his colleagues laud him for doing this because we know how important sports are and how complicated they are in our society. Well, who was Bob Berry? Well, my first reaction is, you saw a picture of his dad. Bob was very much like his dad. He even had that old Missouri drawl. And he looked like him. Bob adored our dad. But I started thinking after Bob died, who was he really? And here's what I came up with about his life. His was a life of service. When you think about the thousands of lives that this man touched, and you heard Doak talk about some of their messages just now. He imparted his knowledge and his wisdom, and I liken him to the Pied Piper. They followed him to the extent that when they got out of law school, he collaborated with some of these students and went on to write periodicals and books. That's the effect that this man had as he served his students. The second thing is, and the guys have already talked a little bit about his humor, but Dana, his son, said it best. He taught with laughter. And so when I think about all of these lives that he touched, I have just one brief story. When Dana talked about Bob reciting the rule by memory. Folks, this was 125 students. So the new students would come to class the first day. They were like this. This guy was calling the name of every student in the class. One day, a guy piped up and he said, "There are two of us in the class with the same name. We'll call him John Smith." Bob thought a minute, and he said, "John A. Smith?" And then, for the other, he said, "And John D. Smith." He heard no more. Either John Smith. But that's the kind of teaching that he did. How he inspired these students. The last thing I want to talk about, and it's again something neither of us, none of us talked about what we were going to say today. But it was talked Northwest Missouri. And at the time that he went through high school, the schools were segregated. And then we know the wonderful civil rights action that took place in 1954, the year that Bob graduated from high school. But he so much believed in a deep sense of justice, equality, always for the underdog. The guy didn't have an intolerant bone in his body. That's who Bob Berry was. So in summing up, he was the best brother you could ever have. We shared much: sports, politics, history. We tried to solve the problems of the world, very unsuccessfully. So I leave today with the idea that Bob is gone, but he's not forgotten. He's a true Renaissance man. We will remember you